Okay guys, we're going to take a look at Dash, and I'm going to try to keep the videos actually very short from now on because some people don't like it long, and I'm Asian. Okay, trust me, I know. Some people like it much shorter than they do long, okay guys? Not everybody likes them long, these videos of mine. Some people do like them short, okay, and to the point, and thick. I'm just kidding guys. Get your mind out of the gutter, please. So the first thing we've noticed is, well, first of all, let's talk about the prediction that I made a while back. I made a while back a prediction enter between 410 and 425, and target prices was up to 582, which we absolutely hit, and I haven't looked at Dash since then. So the first thing we noticed since the beginning of time, pretty much, or in April when it was added to bitfinex here, I don't know if it was, I have no idea how long it's been around for, I'm not going to lie. We notice this trendline support being established right here, right? Kind of like that. So then the first thing I like to do on a big chart is just kind of draw a line like that. Just try to see if it's going to form a channel. And surely enough, it does, right? Surely enough, it does. And it stays above the 55 moving average of mine, the exponential one. And instead of going to the lower side, it ends up parabolically moving up, especially here, which was a good signal to buy. And as soon as it broke through here with conviction, right? People might have missed out on all of these ones, but on this one, people most likely would have bought and then skyrocketed there. So that ended up happening, and it created something here called an expanding diagonal. Okay, and expanding diagonals are incredibly profitable. So what we would have done is we would have just drawn this line, you know, in various ways. We would have maybe expected a bounce here if we just took the extreme cases of just wick to wick, right? If we try to get an average of the line, an average of all, an average of all the candles, it tends to be a little bit more presentable, right? I'd say that's very presentable, right? Or even on the lower side, this might even be better. I'm just trying to fit it to hit there now. So realistically, that's a good one, right? It's hitting all these points really well here, and it's taking the average of all of them, right? One would argue it'd be like that, but no, you can't do that. You want it to be on the lower side. And sure enough, it hits kind of the bottom there. We can even go like that, right? It hits the bottom here. And a lot of people would have expected this to be a really good buy zone right here, especially a good buy zone. My buy zone was over here, okay? My buy zone was somewhere in here. And I'm going to go to a different chart now. In here, between like 415, 425-ish. My computer's lagging, it's so weird. Right here, 415 to 425-ish, because I noticed that was only the first impulse wave up there, and it was consolidating for breakout right here. So that's why I suggested for people to consider that trade there, right? And this just kept expanding. It just kept expanding like that. That's so weird, my scale. It's doing some weird stuff right now. I'm gonna close some stuff. Not that I don't have enough RAM, because 16 gigabytes apparently is not enough for it to run this. So yeah, so it met a little bit of resistance around here, depending on how you drew it. It could have been like that, right? It could have been like that, but usually you want to get a relevant point like that. So it met resistance there, and as soon as it broke it, wham, it broke out just like that. And now that is what we see, okay? What we see is this right here, with this becoming the first wave that officially ended, and this becoming the third wave that ended. That made 3 waves in here. Let's see if we can see it on the weekly. Yeah, we can see it on the weekly easily. Right, here's wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and here's 5. And now we're about to consolidate. So this is what I'm talking about right here. This is the 5 waves on the weekly that it made. Might be harder to distinguish with a very extended 5th wave right there. On a daily, of course, it's going to be a lot harder to distinguish. So if we line it up a little bit better, it would have been something like that. So this was only the first wave that was forming, right? So doesn't that look really beautiful? Here it makes 5 waves. It was so strong, this third wave right here, barely retrace right here. So yeah, on the third wave, you'd have to zoom in on a different time frame. Let's see if we can see that just for fun. It's a very hard count, this one here. I don't want to count it, to be honest. Oh, okay, I can see it. This wave, second wave, this would be the third wave there, and we have an ending fifth wave, right? An ending fifth wave, like diagonal or channel or flat. See this pattern right in here? This pattern in here is a 1, 2, once I drew it from too late. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make, well, it actually starts from about down here, you can see, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and an ending one. And here we can also count the 5 waves in there. 1, 2, 3. This one here, we're just going to, something like that. This one retraces pretty much almost to the territory of wave 1 just by a wick. Anyways, we're not going to talk about that too much, but it generally counts as all the Elliot waves there, right? So definitely 5 waves we're counting fairly precisely, right? Of course, there are alternate wave counts, but we don't want to factor in all of them. We want to focus on the future, not the past too much. The past can give us a really good idea of what's going on, but that's about it. But it can also give us an idea of like just things in general, such as general direction of I guess the past gives us a lot of the trend lines and supports when we analyze them, and we can get an idea of the patterns that have been emerging in them, because we find a lot of sub patterns of the main trend pattern, right? So we get, you know, this one here obviously acts as a support, okay? It obviously acts as a long support now, whether we like it or not. This one here, we're not going to need to worry about that. But what we do see is it's moving parabolically, right? It's definitely moving parabolically, like on a weekly it is. We don't see too much of it here right now. The volume is declining on the weekly, so we know that it's in the correction phase right now. See, we know that this is a motive wave up because there's lots of volume, but then it curves upwards and then starts to come down during the correction process. Now, what we see on a lot of coins right now, like even Bitcoin, is we see something like this right there, okay? We see something like this right here, and we see it wedging into shape like here. For example, let's look at Bitcoin right now. That's what Bitfinex is doing, or Bitcoin on Bitfinex, right? It made a touch somewhere down there, made a parabolic shape as well, right? It made a parabolic shape or a channel shape as well, and it's definitely moving very parabolically on the weekly Bitcoin, but it made a touch down here pretty much, right? Almost. And then bounced off of it, made a touch somewhere up there, and then down here, and we're expecting another touch there and another touch right here right now. So Dash is actually very, very similar in the same way, right? If we look at these two charts, right, that's Dash. I'm just going to go back to it one more time. That's Bitcoin. Okay, just look over here, and now this is Dash. It's almost identical, wouldn't you say? But though it might have touched it already into this zone right there, right? It might have touched into that zone right there already, and it might be ready for an actual breakout. So that's another way to look at it as well, right? That this B has already formed, and then it looks like it's very primed for a breakout right now upwards. So I think that it's going to be touching one more here. So sorry about that, I made a mistake. Looks like the ABC, right, has formed there, just like that. And A, B, C, D, E can come as well, and ABCs are typical zigzags, right? We would want to label an ABC like that as a zigzag, just a typical 353 or a 535. But we don't use an ABC for wedge type patterns like this because it's a wedge. It's a different type of annotation. So what we call that is an A, B, C, right, and a D and an E somewhere in here. But first of all, before we can count this as valid, we have to understand that all of this right now, okay guys, all of this right now, when we do Elliot wave, we get one, 2, 3, 4, right? 4 somewhere there, and 5. And a lot of these times, what people like to see is channels. That's an Elliott wave trader's dream. A channel like that, right? Wouldn't you guys like to see a channel where it just makes touches like this? Say, just as an example like that. And then the fifth wave, right? It comes down and we wonder, right? You know, we have a solid support that's established, right? So it can do something like this, right? It can go in A and then B, for example, somewhere up there, just like how this is the B right there that we see. And C could end up being right here, right? And if that is the C, then we will expect a wedge to happen, and then we will end up calling it A, B, C, D, E instead. But sometimes it can make a double bottom, right? And it actually breaks the channel, right? It breaks the channel, and then we find support again at A right over here. That doesn't end up holding, right? And if this is, and then all of a sudden, let's say it's B is lower just for the sake of slope wise, then all of a sudden, right, if this sloped support line doesn't hold, then like at C there, for example, and then C becomes a possible double bottom, right? A double bottom like that. And then if that doesn't hold, guys, right, and it becomes a descending triangle, right? It is most likely to bounce off of it and then play this and then possibly break up or down, most likely down, because there's more downward force. And then what ends up happening is this C ends up becoming extended, right? C like that. And all of a sudden, the ABC becomes a pattern like this, where it finishes off. And then after it finishes the C pattern, it attempts to break out. And then if that ends up failing to be an impulse wave, because we're now in something called a flat pattern, right? A flat pattern according to Elliott wave, then if it fails to break out, right? And then we get an X pattern, and then we get a Y. So now that we have A and B, or sorry, A and C, it could form, you know, it can form these shapes. It can form a wedger, something wedged in like that. It can form a channel, right? So we have this support and this support right there. And then it attempts to break out into an impulse wave. Sometimes it does, rarely it does though. So we'll get at least double correction like this right here. And it attempts to break out, but if it fails, then it ends up making another line like that, okay? And then we call this an X correction if it fails to make an impulse wave. And then we get a Y down over here like this, okay? A Y goes down there with an A, B, C pattern that comes down like that as well. That can come in different shapes, like an expanded flats as well, right? And this is how we get our 5 wave patterns, right? This could be right here like that. So this is how you get your, you know, your 1, your 2, your 3, your 4, and your 5 touches, right? On the flag bottom right there. Then that's how you guys see it as a flag, right? So this is the complicated, not the complicated, but the very technical version of what the process is that has to break all the way from the beginning of when we start seeing patterns at the beginning. So it's very easy to plan what ahead of time, because think of it like process, okay, like a workflow process where a series and steps of things has to happen before the next things happen, and we just try to isolate exactly where we are in the process. And once we do that, we know exactly what could happen. So the first step is first, guys. Check this out. See something really cool? Top form, okay? We're going to go to the top of the wave 1, like that, and we're just going to clone it, like this. Is that coincidence? Is that coincidence, guys? No, really, is that a coincidence? So, want to see something even more cool? So when this baseline right here was formed, right, that we talked about earlier, if we clone this, it also made a channel-ish, right? Like that. A little bit of a higher, but nevertheless fairly parallel to many, many points. And if we took the beginning of the breakout to the end of the breakout, or sorry, to the, say, the tip of the breakout right here. So if I did something like that, right, the beginning of the breakout to the very, where the breakout ends, right? If I did something like this, just as an example, a really long line, and where it bounced right here, is it coincidental that this line is exactly parallel, guys? Do you guys see what I'm talking about right here? Is it coincidental that the beginning of the breakout right here to where the breakout reached the peak, to the beginning of the breakout to where it reached the peak? Is that a coincidence? Okay, so if we assume something like that is possible right there, that's kind of cool. So if I did it to here as well, is that a coincidence, guys, as well, right? Where the slope is almost like, I'm probably getting the slope wrong because it's on such a high time frame. But just, you know, I'm just eyeballing it right here, okay? I'm just literally eyeballing it from where the breakout began there to where the breakout ended there. And, you know, the slope is almost identical, wouldn't you say? So the thing we try to find is symmetry. When you find a lot of symmetry in charts, hey, if you're going to assume that wave 1 happened like that, you're going to assume wave 2, you're going to see wave 2 happen like that. Why would you not assume that wave 3 is going to happen like that? Why would you assume anything otherwise other than symmetry, right? That's why these ratios exist in nature, and Fibonacci does a really good job of helping us finish the rest. So we find a lot of zigzag patterns like that all the time, right? So that's how these things are formed. I mean, when something is moving up, it only forms some ways, right? I mean, it can form like in a line, right? You know, it can go zigzagged in a line, right? It can form parabolically as well, right? It can form parabolically if there's that strong of an uptrend. It might, you know, curve as well, right? It might curve something like that, like a really big arc that might take a really long time to go up, right? But along these lines, there's lots of like ups and downs along the way, right? And of it going up, it can only make so many different patterns, right? I mean, you're gonna reach a top there, right? If wave 2 ended there and where wave 1 began, you're just gonna draw a line like that, right? And then if wave 4 can only retrace the territory wave 1 about, we know that, you know, it's going to form some sort of channel or base at first. This one might not even have reached it. Like, there's just there's many different variations that can form. Don't get me wrong, but once you get familiar with the different patterns out there, it becomes a little bit easier to trade because you start to see things a little bit better, right? And that's what I'm trying to show you guys as well, that that we got to recognize a lot of these patterns. So this looks like it is wedging into here, right? Now we got to check out the Fibonacci retracement. Fibonacci retracement, which is like somewhere right there. And we already see it retracing to a really healthy amount. We see this big dump, and these wicks always happen, guys, at the end of the 5th wave. It's really good and helpful when you count Elliot wave, because when you know how to count Elliot wave there, right, you can identify the 5th wave at the top or very near, like how I did for Ethereum. Okay, did you guys see Ethereum when I called the top when it was $1,300? I called that it would reach around 1025, and Ethereum reached a low of 1075. I was $50 away with Ethereum, which was still pretty darn impressive, right? So we got to know exactly where the tops are. Otherwise, you get stuck into these leveraged long positions, and when you're in these leveraged long positions, you're just going to get liquidated because you're going to hope and pray. But then this cascade and the domino effect happens where people are triggered, and the stop loss triggers and the liquidations all happen, and these long wicks happen there, right? So what do we expect with Dash? We expect Dash to be consolidating into this pattern right here, right? So that's not a buy zone right there. I'm expecting this to hold right here, guys. I'm honestly expecting it to hold in there, okay? Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this TA. Not only that, we see kind of a buy zone right on top of here as well. Otherwise, it's free fall, right? This is a strong buy zone, and we're reaching it already as a support, right? Right here in these regions here. So it is up to you guys. I am no financial advisor. It is up to you guys where you decide to enter and exit. What I recommend doing is to try to watch this video, go to your chart, and try to copy drawing what I'm drawing, because once you are able to mimic it, you can also identify these things by practicing over time instead of just watching. Trust me, you don't learn how to chart by watching, okay? You learn how to chart by participating. So you got to get into that mentality of participating and charting through that way. And once you guys get good at it, you guys know how many tweets I get a day on Twitter and on YouTube where people are like, man, you taught me how to chart. You taught me how to chart, and I'm up like 10,000%. Like, yeah, some people have said that. Most people are like up, thousands of percent already, because they're just learning these. Honestly, these skills are fairly basic to me now because I've been doing it for a while. But I get tweets like that so often, guys, that people are learning how to chart by practicing and watching these videos over time, and they are making some ridiculous amounts of money because they're learning how to do tactical analysis on their own, and they're not little sheep who's following people, right? So this is how I'm taking it right now. I'm taking it as an A, right, which touched there, B touched there, C touched there, E, and right there. That's how I'm gonna take this. I have no other way to take this right now. But another thing that I am worried about is that that like I do count 5 waves here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So that's A definitely to me. And B is really, really long over here, right? But what if this was B and that was C right here? And then that's a X that failed, right? And now we're about to make X that failed. And now, if it does fail, I want you guys to know this would not be a valid it could be a valid A, B, C, D, E pattern, but when it gets to here, right, if the E fails to bounce upwards, because this fails, because this support fails, I just want to cover all the scenarios. This support right here fails, this major one right here, okay? And then once this major support fails, we are now in this region right here pretty much, okay? We are in this region over here now. So before, we were in a region of something like here, right? With the supports that we were talking about. Because this extended all the way down to here. That's what we're using as our support. But if that region fails now, all of a sudden we're now range bound to this area right here. Why do we say that? We say this because we failed to break out of here right now. So obviously it's gonna find some sort of sell-off, and then when we find sell-offs, we're gonna get to a region that finds support. So this region right now is where we're finding support, right here. It's a first tier, I would call it, of support, right? First tier of support. Okay, I want to show you guys something in here with Bitcoin right now. You guys need to understand that for Bitcoin, we have different levels of supports as well, okay? So for example, we are in a wedge right now for Bitcoin, which is doing pretty well. Actually, I might have overdone it, like, yeah, it was like that, right? It was more so like that, and that made more sense, and it broke out of it, right? But it's still like kind of wedged right now if we look at it from the perspectives of the two bottoms, and even including some of this, we still see it wedging, right? Right now, we still see it wedging, so a valid A, B, D, C, E can still happen. Now, this is the first tier of support for Bitcoin in these regions there, which held. If that fails, we end up moving down to this region over here now, right? Which now becomes a descending triangle, right? Which is fairly bearish. Fairly bearish, and it might need an extended correction. And Dash is in the same boat right now, where it's hanging on in that particular apex point right here, right? The one that I deleted earlier, which I'll draw back in just to have a reference in here. Excuse me. Yeah, so now we're just in this buy zone, but if this buy zone fails, we move to a lower buy zone. We move to between the 900 to the 950 range. Right now, we're still in this zone right here, between the 977 and the 1036 range, right? Right here. Right now, we're at 1035, but if that doesn't hold, then we're going to be going into here. But let's say it does bounce and it makes a touch up there, then we might expect a breakout. So, guys, like, right now, we have a pretty good retracement up to 0.5 and 618 even, but I do expect to make another touch at the base bottom of even like not 0.5, but like even right here, right? And then up there and here. So we have to be mindful of the scenarios. So here are different scenarios. But first of all, I want to go over what this thing is set to do, just based on a 0.618 Fibonacci retracement, okay? And we're going to assume that it's going to shoot a little bit shy, and we're going to assume that this is a channel as well. We're going to assume that this is a channel, right? That just goes like this right here. How does that look right there? Looks good, right? So this is a channel there, and we assumed symmetry before, right? That's from where it broke out, right? So let's just clone that right there and assume symmetry again. And tip from where we landed and try to you can assume that this doesn't hold and it ends up becoming a little bit less like that. We first of all have a general target of right here based on trend angle analysis. I'm going to shoot for 2250, 21 to 2250. I'm gonna shoot for right there first, and then the next thing that we do is we use a Fibonacci extension and shoot slightly lower than a 1-to-1 extension, and assume the worst case where it does even make a descending triangle into a bull flag to come a little bit lower to the 618 region, right here. Actually, no, I don't want to count that 805. I want to shoot for where we see an average of the most price action right now, which is probably right between this area. I don't think it'll make a 1-to-1, even at the lower point right here, okay? Lower point right there of that candle. Therefore, what we see is we see slightly less than a 1-to-1 ratio and above a 786 ratio right here. And wave 5s tend to be very strong, as we've noticed in this bull market right now. Therefore, my target will be 2250, below 2250, and above 2100. So based on my Fibonacci extension, technical analysis, and also based on the trendline analysis as well, and also based on just my theories of this wedge possibly holding in here, we could break out to there. And also based on it even breaking down further to a descending triangle and then holding and breaking out, right? Even based on this scenario here, we still hit 2100 to 2250. And then even based on this scenario here, like that as well, we would be hitting, if it goes down to 618 level and it ends up making a bull flag, right? You guys know what I mean by a bull flag, right? It ends up making a bull flag like this instead, where it becomes a WXY type correction rather than ABCDE triangles now, right? So even if it goes down to something like that, we'll say, and it bounces off the 618 fib region, then the target is a little bit less, okay? Then the target is now something most likely between like 1900 and 2055. 1900 and 2055. But as it stands right now, while this pattern is in play, it looks like we're going to be hitting anywhere between those numbers right there, 2100 and 2055. So those are my thoughts, guys, for Dash. We've got some amazing risk to reward ratios that we can play. If it does break out here, right? If it does break out there and we shoot for the lower end of even 2100 here, and we set a stop loss for stop stop loss for a round number. Shoot, 850 stop loss, okay? Stop loss of 850, say the 0.5 fib region, or you guys can be very daring if you want, and you can even choose a stop loss at, like, you know, you don't want to lose that much though. You don't want to lose 30% and be that risky. I might even keep it limited to even 10%. 10% is good at $900. Just be very disciplined, okay? Because now your risk to reward is 8.32, and then your reward possibility is 106. That's case one. If this ends up holding, okay? If it doesn't end up holding, we move down to the 905 region here, right? The lower tier that I was talking about, a buy zone would be like 880 to 950-ish around there. So then our buy would be different, right? Then our risk to reward would actually, like, our target would also be slightly different. Our target would now be, say here in this range, less than the 1-to-1, a little bit above the 780. Yeah, so between 1950 and 2050-ish. And that holds and breaks up, awesome. If not, we move down to the lower end right here to the 618 Fibonacci region. We lower our buy, we lower our fib extension as well. Lower our fib extension, do the same thing and be consistent. A little bit higher than 786, lower than there. Now, if it retraces to the 618 level right there, right? That's worst case scenario, which I don't see, guys. I don't see. It's got to break this channel first, okay? If it retraces down to over there, then we're looking anywhere between like 1800 to 1930. But we will assume the middle scenario, okay? The middle scenario pretty much is going to be the best. Actually, no, I can't do it, guys. The best scenario would be the one where sorry, I'm trying to click on that, where we bounce off of here and we create a channel and we go upwards and we do what Bitcoin has done for a very long time. It loves to stay in the channel, guys. That's the kind of its thing, right? So that's the kind of pattern that we see right now emerging. That's being wedged into here. So something is critical is going to happen. People are either going to go into a long position there if it breaks up, or if it breaks down, they will go into a short position, right? Either way, just based on everything that I've talked about, trendline analysis, Fibonacci extensions, even Elliot wave, target's pretty clear, guys. Just based on worst case scenario, like we're looking at about 2100 or so, we'll say, right? 2250, we're best case. Actually, no, I didn't. That's right, I took right below that one. You know what? I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it to about 2000 to best case to about 2200. 2000 to 2200. Those are more respectable numbers in my opinion. So the target is $2,000, and the next target after that is $2,200. So there you guys have it. If you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some insight, I'd appreciate an upvote on steemit. If you guys haven't created an account on there, do it. You guys should write about yourselves on there, write about your hobbies, your interests, and you know, it's a pretty cool community as well, I have to admit. And if you guys haven't followed me or subscribed to me on YouTube and Twitter, I'd really appreciate that love and support as well. And if you guys especially love the video, I have a dog named Lino that you guys know. She's got her own little cryptocurrency piggy bank for emergencies that some people have donated to. Not out of obligation, guys. Don't ever feel obligated to. I'm cool. I'm chill. But if you guys ever want to help out the community and the cause, you're welcome to put something in the piggy bank there. Other than that, have yourselves a great day, and make sure to always be safe and cautious, guys. We'll see what goes on with Dash. I have extrapolated a lot of data right now to give you guys insight on possible plays. As much as I'd like to predict and guess what is going to happen, that is not the goal of my channel. The goal of my channel, guys, is to develop your skills, to give you insight and teach you how to think critically from all different perspectives and different cases of what could possibly happen. So see you guys in the future, probably in like 2 hours. I know you guys love seeing me because I love seeing you too. Take it easy.